What if the person you were meant to love already exists, living their life, breathing in the same air, maybe even walking past you without either of you knowing? What if, at this very moment, they are laughing, or crying, or facing their greatest fear, fighting a quiet battle of their own, becoming, healing, preparing, just like you? And what if all of it, your longing, your waiting, your silence, is not a pause in the story, but part of the design? This isn't a story about romance. It's a story about timing, divine timing, the kind that doesn't answer to clocks or calendars or dating apps, the kind that listens only to readiness, soul readiness. You see, we were never taught to slow down for love. We were taught to search for it, to chase it, to demand it show up exactly when we're tired of being alone. But what if love doesn't arrive when you're tired? What if it arrives when you're whole? There's something mysterious about the way life unfolds when you're not looking. Something sacred in how God, or fate, or the universe, or whatever name you choose, moves the pieces of your life quietly, invisibly. So much of what we call coincidence is something deeper. Jung called it synchronicity, the subtle alignment of events that seem random but aren't. A stranger you meet in a place you almost didn't go, a conversation you weren't supposed to have, a silence you couldn't explain. Not every meaningful encounter comes with a spark. Some come with a whisper you can only hear if you're still enough. But we don't like stillness. We scroll, we swipe, we numb. We pretend the ache isn't there, but the ache is real, and it's not here to punish you. It's an invitation, a signal that something inside you is waking up, calling for more. What if your waiting isn't a delay, but a preparation? We often think that love is late, that maybe we missed our chance, or we're not lucky, or we're too broken. But divine love isn't something you stumble into when you've had enough heartbreak. It's something you become ready for when you're no longer begging to be saved. Readiness doesn't come from desperation. It comes from stillness. It comes from shedding old patterns and standing eye to eye with who you really are. Because love, the kind that changes everything, can't enter a space that's still begging to be filled. It enters the space you've already made sacred by filling it yourself. So no, this isn't about finding someone to complete you. This is about becoming someone who no longer needs completing. Imagine this: you sitting in a cafe, distracted, checking your phone, your mind 1,000 miles away, and across the street someone else waits. Maybe they're watching the same clouds move. Maybe they're sipping coffee alone, thinking about love too. But neither of you see the other, because both of you are still looking for what you think love is supposed to look like. So you miss each other. How many times has that happened without you knowing? How many people passed you by, not because they weren't right, but because you weren't present? The truth is, God rarely shouts when he moves. He whispers, he nudges, he rearranges quietly. And if you're not paying attention, if you're still measuring love by sparks or chemistry or fairy tale timing, you won't notice that what you're looking for might already be brushing against your life, waiting for you to wake up. We ask, where is my soulmate? But maybe the better question is, am I ready to recognize them when they appear? Love, real love, rarely looks the way we imagined. It doesn't burst into our lives with fireworks and violins. It arrives like breath, subtle, quiet, and often it requires us to be a different version of ourselves to even notice it. That's why the pause you're in right now matters, because maybe it's not a pause at all. Maybe it's the space where your heart is being reshaped, where your eyes are learning to see again, where your soul is healing from the last time it mistook attachment for love. So when you say, I'm waiting, know this: you're not behind, you're not forgotten, You're not too late. You're just becoming. And if there's one thing divine timing always respects, it's a soul that chose to become whole before asking someone else to hold it. Are you becoming that soul? Because when you are, love shows up, and not the kind that saves you, the kind that walks beside you because you learned how to walk alone. That's when the real story begins. Have you ever felt it? That strange moment of silence in a crowd, a glance that lasted a fraction too long, a fleeting sense of déjà vu with someone you've never met, a stranger brushing past you who, for reasons you can't explain, made your heart pause. We brush it off. We say, that was nothing. But what if it wasn't? What if those moments, those ordinary, forgettable seconds, were actually sacred intersections? What if, just once or twice in your life, your path crossed with someone you were meant to meet, but neither of you were ready? It's a quiet kind of heartbreak to realize that destiny doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, softly, so softly that if you're not paying attention, you walk right past what was meant for you. We think of soulmates as events, big, life-changing, cinematic, but often they arrive disguised as a shared smile at the grocery store, as the person behind you in line who says something that strangely echoes your own thoughts. As a coworker, you never really noticed until one day they said the exact thing your soul needed to hear. And then they're gone. Life moves on. But something lingers, because your soul noticed, even if your mind didn't. How many times has God nudged your path toward someone, but you were too distracted, too guarded, too focused on what you thought love should look like, to see it for what it was? We expect fireworks, but real connection often shows up like a flicker, a spark so small you could miss it if you blink. Think about it. The bus you missed, the event you almost didn't attend, the cafe you sat in for no reason at all. What if something was trying to meet you there? Carl Jung called it synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that carry a hidden message. But we rarely recognize the message in real time. Not because it's invisible, but because we're not tuned in. We're tuned to patterns, height, job title, background, hobbies, charisma. We chase archetypes we've built in our heads. And while we wait for the one to show up with all the right traits, the real connection, humble, soft, soul deep, might already be walking past us unnoticed, because it doesn't look the way we expect it to. And here's the quiet truth. Sometimes the love of your life passes you not because fate failed, but because you were still holding the blueprint of a fantasy in front of your eyes. So much of love is missed, not through loss, but through misrecognition. Think back. Have you ever felt drawn to someone in a way you couldn't explain? Not attraction, not obsession, just a gentle pull. Something about them felt familiar, like a memory from the future, and maybe you dismissed it, told yourself it was nothing, or maybe you were afraid. But what if it was something? We don't often realize when we're being given glimpses of what we're not yet ready for. Love will not crash through your walls. It waits outside them. It respects your pace, but it also doesn't linger forever. This isn't to make you regret, it's to awaken you, because missed chances aren't punishments. They're signals, proof that something greater is weaving through your life, that even when you feel alone, you're part of something intricate, mysterious, intentional. So instead of asking, why did I miss it? Maybe ask, what was I meant to learn from that glimpse? Because the purpose of these moments isn't always to give you what you want. Sometimes they prepare you to receive what you weren't capable of holding yet. Sometimes it's not about getting it right the first time. It's about becoming the person who knows what to hold on to when it comes around again. Love has many lives, and the soul has many chances. But it also has a responsibility to stay open, to stay aware, to stay present enough to see not just what dazzles, but what calms, not just what excites, but what feels like home. Because soulmates don't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes they arrive with quiet eyes and a steady voice. And if you're still chasing lightning, you'll miss the lantern. So ask yourself, have I missed someone, not because they weren't for me, but because I wasn't ready to see them? If the answer is yes, don't drown in that thought. Rise with it. Because if love passed once, it can pass again. And this time, you'll be watching. We think love begins when we meet someone new, but real love often begins long before that, in the spaces where no one is watching, in the quiet places where we break, question, rebuild. Before you can love someone deeply, you have to face what broke you. Not because love demands perfection, but because it demands presence, and it's impossible to be fully present if half of you is still hiding in the past. You can't receive what you still feel unworthy of, and you can't hold a soul-level connection when you're still clinging to emotional survival. That's why healing isn't optional. It's not a luxury. It's the work. It's the preparation for a kind of love that doesn't just stay, but sees, because love won't save you. It will reveal you, and if what's revealed is still bleeding, still bruised, still shaped by wounds you never named, it will be hard not to hand your pain to someone else and call it love. Many people don't realize this. They think they're looking for a partner, but what they're actually looking for is relief from loneliness, from inadequacy, from fear, and they don't want to heal their wounds. They want someone to hold them without ever asking to see them. But love doesn't work that way. It's not a hiding place. It's a mirror, a sacred one. And whatever you haven't faced within yourself will show up in the relationship you create. Carl Jung said it best, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That includes your relationships, your choices, your patterns. Healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about learning to see it clearly, without shame. It's about asking yourself the harder questions, not why did they hurt me, but why did I stay? Not what's wrong with them, but what was I looking for that kept me blind? It's about reclaiming your power from the people and memories you gave it to without knowing. Take Helena, for example. She was 36, a high achiever, stable career, good friends, but every night when she came home, something felt hollow. She had been in love before, trusted, tried, given everything, and had her heart broken. More than once, she told herself she was over it. That time had healed her. But time doesn't heal what we refuse to feel. She still carried the fear, the guardrails, the belief that love meant loss, that vulnerability would always lead to pain. And because of that, she kept attracting almost loves, safe loves, people who didn't see her, because she didn't know how to be fully seen. Until one day, she heard something that cracked something open in her. Maybe God isn't delaying you. Maybe He's protecting you. That single sentence reframed everything. She stopped asking, why hasn't love found me? And started asking, what part of me still doesn't feel ready to be found? And that's when the real healing began. She entered therapy, returned to her spirituality, not as a checklist, but as a return to her own soul. She revisited her past not to wallow, but to understand. She stopped waiting to be chosen and started choosing herself. Every day, gently, consistently, and in that space where she finally began to feel at peace with herself, love arrived, quietly, no fireworks, no drama, just presence, kindness, ease. Not the person she imagined, but exactly the one her soul had been prepared for, and it only happened because she became the kind of person who could receive that love without sabotaging it. Because, here's the hard truth, we can't recognize what we don't yet believe we deserve. If you think love must hurt, you will chase what wounds you. If you think love must fix you, you will hand over your healing like a job application. If you think love is a prize for being good enough, you will constantly audition. But when you heal, you stop performing. You stop begging. You stop chasing echoes of love in places that only offer noise, and slowly, something shifts. You start to feel full, even alone. You start to choose peace over adrenaline, truth over attention, silence over chaos. And that's when it happens. That's when you stop waiting to be rescued and start becoming someone you'd trust with your own heart. Love isn't something you manifest just by wishing. You prepare for it by becoming. Because healthy love doesn't want your broken pieces scattered on the floor. It wants to meet you standing, knowing who you are, not needing saving, but open to sharing. So if you're still waiting, ask yourself, have I healed enough to hold the love I say I want? Not, have I forgotten the past, but have I learned from it? Not, am I done hurting, but do I know how to care for myself when I hurt? Because the most powerful preparation isn't becoming more desirable, it's becoming more whole. It's cleaning the house of your soul, not because guests are coming, but because you live there, because you deserve to feel safe inside yourself before you ever invite someone else in. Healing isn't a detour on the way to love, it's the path, and when you've walked it long enough, when the echo of your worth becomes louder than your fear, love doesn't feel like rescue, it feels like resonance. It doesn't shout, it hums. It feels like someone who doesn't complete you, just walks beside you while you stay complete. That's the kind of love healing prepares you for, and that kind of love stays. Real love is not what we were told. It's not fireworks, not butterflies, not drama, dressed as desire. It doesn't come wrapped in intensity, confusion, or a burning need to be everything to someone else, just so you feel like something. Real love doesn't rush in like a flood. It doesn't demand all your time, attention, or identity. It doesn't need to consume you in order to convince you it's real. It arrives gently, like a door left ajar, waiting for you to notice. Like a sunrise you didn't expect. Like quiet. The problem is, many people miss it. Not because it wasn't there, but because they were still chasing the version of love they were taught to crave. The one that sparks, the one that shakes, the one that leaves you breathless. But breathlessness is not the sign of love. It's the sign of anxiety. And many of us, without realizing it, confuse chaos for chemistry. We think the roller coaster means it's real, that jealousy is a form of passion, that anxiety in our chest is some kind of romantic excitement, that if it doesn't hurt, it's not strong enough. But what if the real sign of love is peace? That soft exhale, that moment where your nervous system relaxes, where you don't feel the need to impress, to perform, to protect. You just are. And that's enough. Love, when aligned with your spirit, doesn't cause a war inside you. It ends one, but here's the hard truth. Most people don't know what peace feels like in love, because their past has only trained them to survive storms, not sit safely in the sun. So when peace finally arrives, It feels boring, underwhelming, too quiet, not enough sparks. But maybe it's not that love is missing the spark. Maybe you've been confusing sparks with static. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." In relationships, the reverse is also true. What draws us to others can reveal what's still unmet within us. Ask yourself this: what kind of love are you drawn to? The kind that validates your wounds, or the kind that reflects your growth? Because until you heal, you'll be magnetized toward people who mirror your trauma. Not because you want to suffer, but because it feels familiar. And the familiar always feels safer than the unknown, even when it hurts. That's why real love, healthy, divine, grounded love, often comes in forms you didn't expect. It doesn't look like your checklist. It doesn't tick all your fantasy boxes, but something about it just feels clear, present, safe. Not safe because it's dull, but because it's steady. It doesn't demand that you shrink, or explain, or constantly prove your worth. It simply sees you. Let's talk about Lucia. She was 53, a retired teacher, mother of 3, divorced after nearly 3 decades of marriage that slowly eroded into silence. She hadn't given up on love, but she wasn't chasing it either. Then she met Roberto. Kind, thoughtful, different. He didn't look or act like the man she once thought she'd fall for. He didn't stir her adrenaline. He stirred her stillness. At first, she almost walked away. "There's no spark," she said, but something told her to stay, not because of fireworks, but because of the way he listened, the way he remembered small things, the way she didn't have to protect herself around him. It wasn't thrilling, it was nourishing. And for the first time in years, she felt safe enough to open without fear of collapse. 3 years later, she says the peace never faded. In fact, it deepened. And for the first time in her life, love didn't feel like effort. It felt like alignment. So how do you recognize real love? You don't always feel it in your chest. Sometimes you feel it in your breath, in the way your shoulders drop, in how easy it is to be yourself, in how silence becomes a form of comfort, not discomfort. Real love grows you, but it doesn't stretch you past your limits. It challenges your ego, but not your dignity. It may not look like a movie, but it will feel like home. Here are a few signs. You don't feel anxious when they don't text back. You feel trust, not because nothing could go wrong, but because nothing in you is rushing to abandon yourself for their approval. You speak freely. You don't walk on eggshells. You don't dilute your truth just to be more likable. You feel seen, not just for what you offer, but for who you are in stillness. You feel peace. And if you've never felt peace in a relationship before, this alone might confuse you. But it is the mark. Another sign. You feel inspired, not to earn love, but to give more of it. Love, when it's real, makes you want to pray more, heal deeper, show up better, not because you're afraid of losing it, but because you're grateful to have found it. And that's what love from God feels like. Not perfect, not painless, but purposeful. It doesn't pull you away from your path. It walks beside you, matching your pace. And if one of you falls behind, the other doesn't run forward. They reach back. And wait, this kind of love isn't built overnight. It's built over small moments, tiny choices, hard conversations, tender silences, mutual growth. And to receive it, you don't have to be flawless, but you do have to be present, not addicted to fantasy, not stuck in wounds, not measuring it against what you thought it should be. You just have to be here, with your eyes open, your heart steady, and your soul ready to recognize what no longer needs to scream to be seen. So if you're still waiting, maybe stop asking, "Where is love?" and start asking, "When it shows up in a form I didn't expect, will I have the wisdom to recognize it? Not with my fear, but with my peace." Because the deepest love you'll ever know doesn't start with a chase. It starts with stillness, and it speaks in a voice your soul has known long before your mind was ever ready to hear it. We all say we want real love, but what most people want, if they're honest, is a fantasy that makes them feel safe, a story, a version of love that fulfills their expectations without ever asking them to question those expectations. We think we're looking for someone, but often we're just looking for a feeling. The feeling of being chosen, of being wanted, of never having to feel alone again. And so we build a list. They should be tall or soft-spoken, ambitious but gentle, mysterious but emotionally available. They should understand us without us needing to explain. They should heal what someone else broke, fill the silence, complete the picture. But what if your list is just your fear, dressed up as standards? What if every item is less about connection and more about control? Because the more we try to shape love into what we've imagined, the more we shrink the space where something real could grow, something unexpected, something true. Real love rarely looks the way we picture it. That's the paradox. No one tells you. It doesn't come in the package you ordered. It doesn't always check the boxes you once thought mattered. And it won't always make sense to your logic, but it will make deep, steady sense to your soul. The problem is, most of us aren't looking for love. We're looking for emotional certainty, something that feels like safety, because we can predict it. Someone who won't hurt us, because they mirror our fantasy. A relationship that doesn't ask us to change, just to be adored exactly as we are, wounds and all, without ever needing to grow through them. But love isn't here to protect your comfort zone. It's here to reflect your becoming. And it will challenge every shallow definition you've attached to the word connection. It will ask you to let go of the image in your mind so you can meet the soul in front of you. Think about it. How many times have you said no to someone not because they weren't kind or present, but because they didn't match the idea in your head? How often have you walked away from calmness because it didn't feel like the drama you mistook for passion? How many not my type people could have been soul-aligned if you had been willing to see beyond the surface? We're taught to believe that love should strike like lightning, but sometimes it builds like dawn, quietly, softly, without spectacle, and we miss it because we're looking for sparks, not slow-burning safety. In fact, we often reject the very people who are most aligned with our soul's peace because they don't ignite our anxiety, and we call that lack of chemistry. But ask yourself, has your version of chemistry led you to peace or pain? Has it helped you grow or kept you in loops? It's time to redefine what love feels like. Love isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It won't always look like a movie or sound like a poem, but it will feel true, stable, rooted. It will invite you deeper, not into fantasy, but into yourself. And it will never require that you abandon who you are to belong. So let's rewrite the script. Let's stop confusing trauma bonding for destiny. Let's stop thinking that love is meant to be difficult in order to be real. Let's stop chasing relationships that mirror our brokenness instead of reflect our wholeness. Instead, ask yourself, Who sees me when I'm not performing? Who makes me feel calm in my body? Who reminds me, without trying, of who I really am beneath the noise? Because love, real love, doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like coming home. And no, it won't always come with certainty. It might arrive in a form you didn't recognize. It might challenge what you thought you wanted. It might not match your expectations at all. But maybe that's the point. Maybe love isn't here to meet your expectations. Maybe it's here to transform them. So instead of clinging to your image of what love should be, open yourself to what it could be. You might find that the person who brings your soul peace is nothing like what you imagined, but exactly what you needed. And isn't that more powerful than any story your mind could write? Because expectations protect your ego, but surprise awakens your heart. So let the image die, let the checklist fall apart, let the fantasy dissolve. Because real love lives in the places your mind hasn't touched yet. It's not about finding someone who fits your dream. It's about becoming someone who's awake enough to see what your soul has been calling in all along. And it's closer than you think. You just have to be willing to look again. By now, you've likely felt it. The quiet truth beneath all the longing. The realization that love isn't just about finding someone. It's about becoming someone, so whole, so aligned, that when love appears, you no longer question whether you're worthy of it, because you'll already know. The love you're hoping for isn't delayed. It's being prepared. But more than that, it's preparing you. This is the part of the journey few speak about, the invisible part, the waiting that isn't really waiting. The silence that's not absence, but sacred rearrangement. And it begins not out there but within. Real love does not land in the lap of the unaware. It arrives at the feet of the ready. So the question is no longer, where is my person? The question is, am I truly ready to meet them? Without running, without doubting, without losing myself again. Because readiness isn't a feeling, it's a foundation. It's built in the quiet, daily choices no one sees. It's shaped in the conversations you have with your soul when the world goes quiet. It's born from the courage to say, I am no longer available for love that costs me my voice, my peace, or my self-worth. Let's be clear. Becoming ready doesn't mean being perfect. It means being present. It means clearing the space inside you where desperation used to live. It means learning to sit with your loneliness without trying to sedate it with distractions or people who only half see you. It means no longer begging the universe for someone who will finally make you feel enough, because you've already decided you are. This readiness is not a performance. It's not pretending to have it all figured out. It's the opposite. It's letting go of the masks. It's standing still in your own becoming. It's breathing through the discomfort of not knowing what's next and trusting that the right person will only arrive when you no longer need them to fix what you haven't faced. And that facing begins now. So how do you prepare? You start with honesty. Ask yourself, what am I really looking for in love? Connection? Comfort? Escape? And then ask, have I learned to give those things to myself? You cannot ask someone else to be your home if you still treat yourself like a temporary shelter. You must become safe to yourself before you become a safe place for anyone else. That's the first step. The second is to clean house, emotional house. What are you still holding on to that no longer belongs? That person who ghosted you 3 years ago. That relationship you still replay in your mind, trying to rewrite the ending. That voice in your head that says you're too much, or not enough. Let it go. Love can't grow in a room already filled with ghosts. Clearing doesn't mean forgetting. It means forgiving, not for their sake, but for your own freedom. It means finally closing the doors that were never truly open and opening the windows to something new. The third step: practice presence. Readiness requires stillness. If you're constantly searching, constantly swiping, constantly reaching, your energy becomes noise. You lose your ability to perceive what is already unfolding. Love doesn't need you to chase it. It needs you to notice it. So create space for presence. 5 minutes of silence in the morning. A walk without headphones. A prayer whispered, not in desperation but in alignment. Love moves in subtle ways. If your soul is cluttered, you will miss it. Fourth, observe your patterns. Who do you keep attracting? Why? What story do you keep replaying? What part of you still believes pain is proof of depth? Your patterns are not punishments. They are mirrors, and when you break the cycle, you begin a new timeline. One where love isn't a transaction or a test, but a reflection of your healed self. Fifth, nourish your spirit. Your soul needs more than strategy. It needs sacredness. Reconnect with what keeps you whole. Your faith, your art, your body, your breath. Not to prepare for someone else, but because when you treat your own life as sacred, you attract those who will treat it the same. Remember this: love does not rescue, it reflects. If you're still hoping to be saved, love will either feel overwhelming or unreachable. But if you've learned to sit with your shadows and honor your light, love will feel like an echo, a resonance, a meeting place, not a battlefield. And lastly, trust divine timing. But don't live in emotional idleness. Waiting does not mean pausing your life. It means living it fully, while holding space for someone who can meet you in your fullness. It means showing up for yourself even when no one else is. It means choosing wholeness, not because someone told you to, but because you're tired of relationships built on fragments. The irony is, when you stop waiting for love to complete you, it finally finds its way, not as a savior, not as a spark, but as someone who recognizes what your soul already knew, that you didn't need saving. You just needed to stop running from yourself. And now, you're ready. Not for fantasy, not for performance, not for rescue, but for truth, for peace, for partnership. And that's the kind of love that lasts. So walk forward now, not in search, but in surrender. Not to find them, but to continue becoming the person who will know when they arrive. And they will. Because love never misses a ready soul.